Today we're going to be talking about Drew McIntyre's title reign, and we're going to be answering the questions of how should they have booked Drew McIntyre differently, and also what can we expect from Drew McIntyre in the future. And for the first question of this video we have is going to be, is Drew McIntyre a draw? And the biggest reason why we're going to be questioning that is because WWE were lacking in ticket sales for WrestleMania leading up to his title reign, previous to his title reign, after his title reign. So I guess we'll see if Cody Rhodes is the big kind of mover for those ticket sales. Maybe they'll sell out relatively quickly over the next week or two, or maybe it really wasn't a Drew McIntyre problem. It's more so a WWE problem.
Yeah, I think for me it's mostly a WWE problem. I think Drew McIntyre is very capable of being a main draw. However, he has been booked to be very unwanted right now. No one wants to really see him right now because we know kind of what the stuff is going on with him and Cody. It felt like if he were to have another match with Cody, he would just lose, and obviously the direction they went after Elimination Chamber, it made sense that Cody would go back and win that match, or would go and win the championship and face Randy Orton at WrestleMania. But yeah, he's definitely a guy who I think is capable of by all means to be the draw, but unfortunately he hasn't been booked that way.
Yeah, definitely, and it pretty much makes up your point, because our next one is going to be they already had 6 matches with each other previous to this. Now we are kind of including a tag team match, we're including a War Games match, but they had a bunch of matches together already. So getting to this final one where the title change was going to happen, it definitely felt like Cody Rhodes was definitely going to win. There was no way Drew McIntyre was going to win, which you never want to feel from your world champion, that he has no chance of winning. Now obviously if it's a person like a Jinder Mahal or something like that where no one cared for from the start, it's a little bit different. But in the case of Drew McIntyre, where he's someone where everyone loved, people wanted the title reign to happen, this is definitely not what we wanted from his title reign. And for the next point is going to be, maybe people are starting to get a little bit tired of Cody Rhodes because he was the champion for a while, but I think the main point of it is going to be that he signed that contract saying that he was not going to be able to challenge for that title after the 3 stages of hell match. He does that, loses the match, loses Royal Rumble, loses Elimination Chamber, but still was able to be granted that world title shot on the recent SmackDown episode. And Drew McIntyre did kind of ruin the contract in a way where he broke clauses in the contract too and things of that nature. So there is a little bit of sense to it, but it is still a little bit like, what was the point of the contract at that point?
And for another reason why I think it would also be WWE's fault for why they're in the situation they are right now is because they booked themselves in a corner with Drew McIntyre. He has been a guy who, ever since he's won this champion, he wants to stay away from Cody Rhodes, but also is kind of trying to ruin his moments and stuff like that. So he is kind of looking like a real coward. But at the same time, you have this match now set up where Randy Orton has to be in the main event. And do you really want a Drew McIntyre Randy Orton match, or do you want a Cody Randy Orton match? I know what I want. I know what most people would want. It was the right decision for Cody to win. However, I don't think Drew should have been in that position in the first place. Whether that means him not winning the championship at all, I think that is a better decision at the end of the day right now. But yeah, I don't think that going the direction they did was the right call.
They could have changed his title reign completely. They could have booked him just stronger and better. Instead of being the cowardly heel, he could have been the heel that's like a dominant one, sort of, not obviously like a Obafemi, but similar to that level of like, all right, I'm just gonna beat the hell out of you, I don't care if you want a rematch. But yeah, they definitely didn't do that, and that's gonna lead us into our next point, was how should they have booked Drew McIntyre.
We're going to kick it off back at Bad Blood, where we've seen Drew McIntyre wrap up his feud with CM Punk in that Bad Blood match, Hell in a Cell. One of the best matches of the year, one of the best matches of the decade at this point. And yeah, after that, we have the tease of kind of this Bloodline Hunter story of Drew McIntyre, where we're going after Roman Reigns. He had these promos against pretty much all of the Bloodline members and stuff like that. When I think that would have been a very good thing to continue. It seemed like the fans really wanted that. I think that would have been a good storyline to kind of continue, build off the back of CM Punk. But you go into Royal Rumble, you can start building some stuff with Roman Reigns being the final opponent, obviously the main tribal chief, and he'll be the WrestleMania match for Drew McIntyre. Matches with the Usos, you can have matches with Solo, you have Tama Tonga, Tonga Loa, you have those people you can add in there. So there's a lot of ways you can go about it to kind of build up the hype of this final match between Drew McIntyre and Roman Reigns at WrestleMania. It's a big match where both men can go on and have a big moment.
So in this storyline, we have things happening such as Drew McIntyre and Roman Reigns eliminating each other at the Royal Rumble, something of that nature to get them to WrestleMania. We have him taking out people such as Solo Sikoa, the Usos, the Tongas, Jacob Fatu, everyone like that, to kind of just officiate himself as the Bloodline Hunter, make him an official guy headed into a WrestleMania. Not yet for the title, because Roman doesn't have the title at this point, but just to build him up as that dominant heel, to make him a believable person to win that world title in the future date. So he goes to WrestleMania, has a one-on-one match with Roman Reigns. He does win that. He goes on to SummerSlam, defeats John Cena as part of his retirement tour to win that title rather than Cody Rhodes. Rhodes did, and I think that would set him up a lot better going forward and make him a more meaningful heel, make him kind of, instead of being the cowardly one that we did get, he could have been, like I mentioned, the dominant one that's very cocky, because that was Drew McIntyre's character before doing all this cowardly stuff. He was the cocky heel. He was willing to go have a match against anyone. He was the person who was beating up CM Punk and carrying him on the shoulders and bloodying his face up and went through that war with him in Hell in a Cell. And that's not the Drew McIntyre that we currently have, so it is kind of a shame from where he went to where he is now.
Going back to the part of Drew McIntyre being John Cena, I think it is a lot more meaningful of a moment than what Cody Rhodes was. Obviously, Cody now being a 3-time champion, or by that time being a 2-time champion, was a big deal just because obviously it is a second world champion, beating John Cena again the win over the rematch. But I think if you have Drew continue to be the big heel that he was, you can continue that while John Cena is also turning face to keep things kind of aligned with how they did go with. But you just have Drew McIntyre in the spots that these other guys have been taking up, because Drew McIntyre has fallen victim of being the guy at the wrong place at the wrong time all the time. So yeah, it'd be nice to finally give him the reward of being, look, here's a big moment for you. You have John Cena at SummerSlam, his last SummerSlam, and yeah, you get the title from him. You finally break his 17th world title run, the record-breaking title run that will always be remembered.
And the final question for this video is going to be, what is the future of Drew McIntyre? What can you expect from him going forward? And that's the hard question about this, is because they booked him into a corner, as we mentioned earlier. There's not a whole lot of directions you can go, but I guess there is a few. And one of them is going to be a big babyface run. That is kind of the one that I'm leaning more towards. I think a big babyface run could make up for all of this heel stuff, because it always does. That's the point of a babyface run, is to say, hey, I'm sorry for everything I did whenever I was a heel. Now I'm a good guy. We can shake hands and be friends now. That's pretty much what it is, and that's what I would expect from Drew McIntyre. I think if Cody Rhodes turns heel, Drew McIntyre would be a good person to kind of take him down a notch if necessary. Obviously, once we separate them for a few months, maybe a year, whatever the case may be. But I think a babyface run is going to be the best part for him. I don't think anything that happened with Drew McIntyre is necessarily his fault. Obviously, there's been matches where him and Cody had together that they could have been a little bit better. He could have maybe cut better promos, whatever the case may be. But that's not really a problem with Drew McIntyre. He has good matches. He cuts good promos. He looks amazing. Everything about Drew McIntyre is great. So it's just a presentation from WWE that led to this kind of title reign of him and kind of the downfall of Drew McIntyre. But hopefully it will be used to be built back up in the future.
Yeah, at WrestleMania, we don't know his plans obviously just yet, and he could be going against Nick Aldis in some type of big match where I can imagine it could be kind of portrayed as a big SmackDown program. But you also have the match with Jacob Fatu right there that has been kind of lingering around. We haven't really seen Jacob in a few weeks, I don't think, so who knows how he'll go into Mania. But yeah, Drew McIntyre, I hope he does have some type of big WrestleMania plans. And the one thing about wrestling at the end of the day is you never know what's going to happen next. We can talk about how bad Drew McIntyre is in terms of his stocks right now, but in 3 months' time, he might be a world champion again. He might be on a way better run. So it's always a possibility that things can always change. But for me, if I had to give a route for Drew McIntyre, I personally would love to see him in AEW. Obviously, there's always going to be the claims of all these AEW people don't need to go to AEW when they're done or stuff like that. But I think for Drew McIntyre, Tony Khan would be forced to put him in a main event spot. He would be one of the biggest names in the company, and he would just be a top guy who can have a lot of great matches, re-show up the value of how much Drew McIntyre has to offer still to the table. I think he would love to have some good matches with Kenny Omega's, the Adam Cole or the Hangman Adam Page's, Kenny Omega's, and so many more that you can just have all these amazing matches with.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in short contracts and kind of making those roster changes and swaps and things of that nature. I do wish that wrestlers did that more often. I think, once Drew McIntyre or really anyone in his position had a long run like he has in WWE, and he pretty much done everything. You won the world titles. Maybe they're not booking you as strong as they did in the past because you have new people who just better or whatever the case may be. I think maybe it is just time to switch over, and then once he does switch over to AEW, that typically takes a person from there and makes them say the same thing, like, hey, they're not using me as much, so now I'll go to WWE, and it just goes back and forth. And that's kind of the cycle that I like in pro wrestling, when people are going back and forth. It's a big exciting moment no matter who it was. We just seen Danhausen come to WWE and get massive pops, massive reactions, all the internet talking about him. So if it were someone like a Drew McIntyre, if it were someone like a Kenny Omega, whoever it may be, you know what I mean? Just a big name person going back and forth. It's always a big thing to talk about, even if they're a little person just like Danhausen.
So we gave our opinion about Drew McIntyre, and obviously things are always subjective to everybody. So I want to know how you guys feel about Drew McIntyre. Do you think he has been done a disservice to about his career so far in WWE? Obviously, he has some of the greatest accolades you can ask for in WWE, and I'm sure he's getting taken care of with in terms of money and stuff like that. But it would be nice to see him get some accomplishments on screen that the fans can kind of get behind him again, because I do think he's one of the best talents in pro wrestling still today. And yeah, I hope a guy who can be at the top of the mountain once again. That will do it for us for today. Again, let us know down in the comments what you think about Drew McIntyre, what you think he should be doing towards WrestleMania. If you haven't already, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. And we'll see you guys in the next one.